Hello everyone, I hope that you're fine. This is our class about the two videos that you have to see for today. And these videos are about the Chinese breakthrough called CRISPR-Cas9. So previously in the lessons we saw the technique of PGD. Both techniques have the same goals, and they both aim to eradicate and eliminate genetic diseases before the birth of the baby. So we're going to see that this technique is more complex first, and it is going further, and that's why it might frighten people even more. So the technique is indeed quite complex, and I hope that you will understand if you haven't understood yet. So this technique involves the discovery of a bacteria. This bacteria can detect a virus, and when it detects the virus, it immediately copies the virus genetic code and pairs it with a special protein called CRISPR-Cas9. This protein is going to act as a scissors, which can cut any DNA and fix the gap with another DNA sequence. So that's what you can see on this picture. Okay, so you can see that this is cut, there is a gap, there is a gap that needs to be fixed between the two parts of the DNA, and this is the protein which can do this. So this technique is part of the genome editing technology, and it's going to enable scientists to edit out, so to take it out, the faulty gene and put back a healthy one instead. It provides the scientists with an opportunity to alter the DNA, so to change the DNA right in the embryo before the birth, and permanently change the cells of the DNA. That's why this technique is going further and might have other consequences that we don't know yet. So this technique, to use these techniques, there are conditions, and to make this technique efficient, there are conditions. So first, it is only possible on a single gene mutation, like the Huntington disease, one of the most famous diseases in this list. And it is not, so on the contrary, it's not possible on diseases that involve multiple gene mutation, like obesity or schizophrenia. So this is the medical part, but there is also a legal part. Sorry, this is not this one. A legal part, because genetic engineering is not authorized in all the countries first, so you need to have the authorization. And so if we take the case of the US, it is allowed in the US, but it is restricted and regulated, and so this is the Federal Drug Administration, so FDA, is this organization which is regulating the use of this technique by the different clinics. So as this technique is going further and bringing new ideas and might bring consequences that we don't know, it is extremely controversial, and as you can see, that not all the persons and not all the citizens agree with the use of this technique. So the doctor on the show explains three main ideas. So some of them are common with the arguments that we can use against the PGD. So as this one, which evoke the idea that this technique is going to increase the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Then he develops another idea. So this idea that this technique is by altering the DNA of the embryo, it is also going to alter the germline for decades, because these changes will be propagated to many generations after. So we need to think also about the future of this, and not only about the embryo who's going to be going to be born. So, and we don't have enough knowledge and scientific knowledge for the moment. So the scientists don't really know and don't completely understand the genome and the consequences that this technique and this modification in the embryo will trigger. It can also introduce other mutations. And finally, he raises ethical issues, because the scientists are more and more, so it's more a general argument, are becoming able to change so physical characteristic and also enhance memories and physical abilities. So that's what we saw with the technique of PGD. So it's not only used for medical reason, but it's also used for cosmetic reason. And then we can we might need to set limits to the use of the techniques, not the limits to the technique, but how these techniques are used in the clinics and the goals of the use of this technique. So if we compare the PGD and the CRISPR-Cas9, so as we said, both techniques want to eradicate genetic diseases before the birth. Here, this technique really alters the DNA of the fetus, while in the case of when people and scientists use PGDs, the scientists are only selecting an embryo with the perfect genetic match among different candidates. They are not changing anything about the embryo. So, as we said, this technique, so CRISPR-Cas9, is going further and is frightening, is even more frightening, because the changes made on the DNA will and might trigger other mutation that scientists are totally unaware of. So in this situation, we can really say that man is playing God when it's in the case of birth and genetic engineering. So that's it for today. I hope it's clear, and see you soon.